Here in the 3D submodule Explorer of Palmeca Romexis software, we have under tools some segmentation tools for segmenting different anatomies of the patient. So for example, we have this jaw segmentation tool that can be used for segmenting the mandible out of the data, so that we get basically mandible and maxilla as separate surface models. If we also have 4D jaw motion included in our license, we also have this other icon here next to our jaw segmentation tool. But in this tutorial, let's activate this normal jaw segmentation tool. So the other one, this would follow the 4D jaw motion process. So let's activate this one, and then Romexis is asking us if we're going to use this craniomaxillofacial surgery module after the segmentation, because in that case, the segmentation result is saved in a little bit different format. So in this case, we don't use the surgery module. So let's reply no. And now that we have the tool opened, we have here on the right side toolbar a wizard, and our first task here is to place these 5 anatomical landmarks in the data. So all of these landmarks are now in red because we haven't yet marked them. So we could just pick here the first one in the list, the left condylion. So we could browse through the data in order to find that. And we can then mark the point by keeping Alt down on the keyboard and by using our left mouse button. So we could mark here on top of the left condylion. And like we see, we automatically get moved to the next point, so the right condylion. So we can repeat Alt down and left mouse button also for that. And now let's mark these occlusion points here in the 3D rendered view. So we could maximize this view in order to see better. And first we would be placing this right side occlusion point. And again, we keep Alt down and we try to mark this point as far as possible on the occlusal surface. So let's mark it somewhere here, keeping Alt down and with the left mouse button. If we get this kind of mistake that we placed it accidentally here on the left side, let's reposition the point. So let's just select it again here on the list, and this time let's be more careful. Okay, now we got it in the right place. So like we saw, we can just pick the point again and reposition it if we would make a mistake. So then let's place this frontal point as far here in the front as possible on the occlusal surface, Alt down with the left mouse button. And finally, let's position the left side point. So now all of these points are marked, and thus the colors of these names that turns gray now, so they have been positioned. If there would be the need to delete any of these points, we could use these transcan icons here. But let's continue in the wizard. So let's click on next. And now let's minimize this 3D rendered view so that we can see the other views as well. So now, based on those points that we placed, the software has colored some parts of the data. So if we browse through the slice tags, we see that it has colored the lower teeth, or part of the lower teeth, and then also the condyles. So these painted areas work as sort of stoppers for the segmentation process. So later on, the segmentation starts from here in the mandible, and with the help of this paint, the software knows where to stop the segmentation so that it doesn't continue all the way to the rest of the data or to maxilla. So everything that is painted here will be part of the mandible. So basically, if we would like to get a very exact segmentation result we might want to check at this stage that the paint is only covering these lower teeth and the mandible, the condylions, and we don't have the paint anywhere in the maxilla or in the upper teeth. So at this stage, we could, if we wanted to, we could fix possible errors because this paint was naturally placed automatically by the software. So if we would see some areas of the lower teeth that are not covered with this paint, here above the paint, we could include also those areas. We could resize this painting cursor, like we see, it has turned into this sphere. So with this one, we can still add the paint, or we can remove it, and we can resize it by keeping Alt down on the keyboard and by using our mouse wheel. So we could paint some finer details. So we could add paint using left mouse button, and we could also remove paint using right mouse button. So this is if we would like to, if it's important for us that all the teeth are covered, we could do these manual adjustments. So left mouse button for adding the paint, and let's check, for example, let's check this coronal view if we have any paint here in the, well, this looks about okay, but we can still take a look at the possibility of removing the paint as well. So we could use the right mouse button for that. So if we would see that there's paint somewhere where we wouldn't like it to be, like we remember everything that is painted will be part of the mandible in this segmentation process. So depending on your needs, depending on what you will use this segmentation result for, maybe you would like to adjust the paint here at this stage. But let's continue to next step. So now what we'll need to do is that we'll need to mark here somewhere in the mandible, sort of like a seed point for the segmentation, where the whole segmentation process will start from. So let's select some point that is somewhere in a solid bone. So that's a good point for starting the segmentation. So let's click on that, and now the segmentation process starts. Let's minimize this again so that we can have a better view. So we can see here already some initial segmentation result, but let's adjust it in the next step. So let's continue again. And now at this stage, we could define the threshold for the segmentation. So here with this slider, we can control which all Hound feet unit values, so basically relative bone density values, are included in the segmentation. So let's drag this a little lower. So when we are using this segmentation threshold slider, we might want to, for example, when we would be using this for surgery, we might want to put it as low as possible, because if we set this threshold too high, there's a risk that not all bone surface is included in these segmentation models. But then on the other hand, if we drag this too low, let's see what happens. If we get the failed segmentation result, not yet. But if we would drag this very low, there might be the risk that the segmentation fails here on the border of mandible and maxilla, and we get also basically all of our data included in the mandible. So we can play with this segmentation threshold slider and determine which all surface will be included here, and when do we get an optimal segmentation result. I will keep it just a little bit higher, and then we can continue. Okay, so let's then finish. So now we will be using this threshold for the segmentation. So now we are calculating the final surface models that we can then see in the object browser. So now, like we see, we got these jaw segmentation objects. So these are basically surface models. So we could also hide the actual CBCT data in the background. And let's see here how our surface models look like. So we could then, for example, hide the upper jaw, and we would only have the lower jaw here in the view. And these, like I said, these are surface models, so we could also, for example, export them in STL format using this export objects in STL format function if we would like to use this surface model somewhere.